The year is 1947. The place is Harlem. And this lovely lesbian power couple is ready to take the entertainment industry by storm. Carmen Del Rio has just landed the lead role in an upcoming film noir, whereas Goldine Brown is the biggest name in cafe society. And together, the two beauties are headed to Hollywood to further their careers. However, before that can happen, a tragic and mysterious death leads Goldine to flee the country to Paris, where she takes a year-long singing engagement, leaving behind her devastated and confused girlfriend to pick up the pieces, wondering what happened. Where did her lover go? And then, one cold February night in 1948, Goldine shows up on her ex-lover's doorstep. Confused, hurt, and understandably shocked, Carmen slaps the Ebony Beauty in a rage, demanding to know what she's doing there, cursing her name. Goldine apologizes for the shock, and she promises that she'll tell Carmen everything if she'll just take a ride with her. Curious and still in love, Carmen agrees, and the two women drive up to the Hollywoodland sign to talk things out. Whatever may have happened between the two of them up there, only one woman knows, because the next morning, Carmen's body is discovered, cold and practically unresponsive. Okay, so none of that is true. Why am I zoomed in so much? I don't know. It's got me zoomed in. Like, hold on, let me see if I can. Anywho, that's none of that is true. These two women are Maria Felix and Esther Jones, respectively. I used them as the character models for the characters in my upcoming historical fiction novel, which I am still working on, and hoping to have published very soon. It occurred to me that I never really let you guys know what it was about. I just let y'all know I was writing it, and then I revealed a whole other book. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it piqued your curiosity. It'll be coming at some point. Don't worry. Till then.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I don't know how many of you all are going to find me here, but here's a backup page for Taz J and Conversations with Taz and all the other updates that I generally give you all. For those that do know, the main page is suspended for another few days till next Tuesday. Got mass reported when I took Monday off, but here we are. We got a lot to get through between today and tomorrow. A lot has happened. Let's dive right on into it. You may have heard, you may not have heard, but in the good old Commonwealth of Kentucky, people were unexpectedly treated to dinner and death. Pay close attention.
TikTok took down the video where I show the people who played the video of Brianna's unaliving. I'm going to show it again and I'm going to keep showing it. TikTok, you can ban me for all I care. Kiss my ass. Hi, Eric and Ella. Everyone say hello to Kathy Adams from Kentucky. Everyone shout out Rita from Kentucky. And everyone please say hello to Jill Racist Nixon. I'm going to keep showing their faces. So TikTok, stop deleting my stuff.
I came from 8.5 hours from Kansas City tonight for reservations. I didn't realize that we would have to sit here and listen to this, nor did I realize that we would be stared upon from the people above, smirking and saying things. I came here to just eat, and I didn't know this was going on tonight. Why weren't the guests aware of what was going on if we had reservations? I would not have sat here for this.
I have no idea what's happening. So
it's the Brianna case about the murder.
It's the first thing I'm hearing about it. I have no idea. They reserved the room to eat.
Well, the waitress said that.
Yeah,
the waitress said that she knew the political things that was going on. I think it's very rude that us as had reservations would have to listen to something like this. I came from Kansas City.
I have nothing to do with that. So.
What a waste! You own the restaurant for the customers that come in.
You have your right to speak. They have the right to speak.
Unbelievable!
Yeah.
Listen,
Do you realize who that is? They killed somebody. A cop. He's a cop.
Our dinner is being disturbed.
Exactly. We paid exactly to eat here. I made reservations. I came from Kansas City.
I understand that, but you're being served, right?
What?
You're being served.
Yes,
You're
but I
eating.
can't eat if somebody's above me staring
I
down.
am sorry.
Unbelievable. You will be known. Oh, they will know about this. Unbelievable.
So I'm going to talk about something that is really just disgusting for this group of people to put on. So apparently 3 or 4 days ago, the the Republican Women's Club of South Central Kentucky hosted a dinner, which was originally supposed to be at the Bowling Green Country Club, but when they found out who their guest speaker was, Jonathan Mattingly, one of the cops that killed Breonna Taylor, they decided to move it to Anna's Greek Restaurant instead. And this is Casey Johnson, who posted about her experience there with her and her friends of color. They had to endure singing, well, maybe not singing, but hearing, rather, all these people clapping and cheering and eating their food while Jonathan Mattingly had the lights dimmed in the entire restaurant and showed the body cam footage of Breonna Taylor's death. Now, this is just absolutely sickening and a disturbing thing to read. You guys can read it here. You can go to Casey Johnson's Facebook page. She has made this post public if you want to read it for yourself, if you don't believe me. But I don't understand. It's just so sickening that there would be people that would pay $40 for a buffet to sit and watch this and cheer it. Now, there is video, too, of them talking with the owner, Vilson. There's Anna and Vilson, the two owners of this restaurant. And you can hear him as he acts like it's not a big deal. And it's just so disturbing that these officers got away with this, and they're making money off of it. They're making money off of murdering somebody. It just sickens me. And I wanted to share this with you guys because I found out about this from Hawk, who I'm friends with here. If you know him, you might have heard that name. And he talked about this, and I had to look this up for myself. And sure enough, yeah, it's a fact. What is wrong with this country we live in? It's just so disturbing. It almost brings me to tears just reading this. And shame on you, Anna's Greek Restaurant, for allowing this in your establishment. And I'm not one that tries to cancel places, but I would definitely think twice before eating at this place. I mean, I will never give my money to this place if I ever happen to be in Bowling Green. But this is just disturbing and something that definitely needs to be called out and called attention to.
Kentucky. Let's go. So this was an event sponsored by the Republican Women's Club of South Central Kentucky, and it featured, from the article, former Louisville police officer turned conservative author and pundit John Mattingly, we can just say murderer, after the initial location for its dinner said it would no longer host the group. Not only did this restaurant allow this function to occur, but they allowed this group to play body cam footage of the assassination of Breonna Taylor. There are tons of news articles on this online, but here's something I found this morning that... So this article is from a website called onlyinyourstate.com, where it does different articles about places of interest in every state. This article came out on their website on the 19th. The event that featured the death of Breonna Taylor happened on the 17th. Now, being a writer myself, I understand that a lot of times when you write an article for a magazine or a blog, whatever, that those are written months in advance. But onlyinyourstate.com, you have had several days since this incident occurred, and it's still on your website? Really? Please watch this entire video that I stitched. The raw emotion, if that doesn't bother you, if it doesn't piss you off and break your heart, there is something deeply wrong with you. So residents of Kentucky, it's time. Let's go. Get off your ass. You protest. You send emails. You send text messages. You call and blow up their phones. You do whatever you have to do. It's time we get this restaurant shut down. And to the Republican Women's Club of South Central Kentucky, how dare you? I guarantee you, all of you claim to be Christian and love Jesus. There is not an ounce of the love of Jesus anywhere in your bodies. The only thing that's changed from the civil rights movement of the 1960s to today is the fact that the photos of the racists are in color now instead of black and white.
I want you to keep in mind that they watched the body cam footage. They saw what happened. They still deny it. They still look at this one individual as a hero. He has a book out. And the fact that there was a black woman there with her black friends, and the room that was rented out was above them, and they were looking down and glaring at them, wanting a reaction. They have no problem hunting us down and us being hunted down and us being murdered. It's still entertainment to them. It's no different than Sunday after church lynchings in the park with a picnic. They're getting off on it. But the next big story are all these files going around. It's like you get some files, you get some files, you get some files. Let's take a look.
It's not at all uncommon that a former president or a former vice president is found after the fact to have had classified documents. What makes this mostly different is that it has been a while since Vice President Biden was Vice President Biden. So the idea that they're only now coming to light makes this unique. All presidents and vice presidents have and look at classified documents all the time while they're in office. When they're out of office, though, they're not supposed to have any of them. The way it usually works is that the National Archives works with White House aides and any staffers for an outgoing president or vice president to identify what documents are personal in nature and what are government property and what are classified in nature. The responsibility is on any individual who has classified documents to make sure that they are properly secured and ultimately properly returned to the right authorities. No private citizen has a right to have classified documents. There are some big differences between the situation with President Biden and former President Trump. First of all, the Trump documents were identified by the National Archives as missing. In their looking through records, they recognized that there were certain documents, some of them of historic significance, that were not in the possession of the National Archives. Ultimately, a search warrant executed where there were dozens of boxes of documents that were found to still be in the possession of the former president. In the situation of President Biden, these were documents that were found by Biden's own aides and associates. And when they realized that they were potentially classified documents, they let the right authorities know and they made plans to transfer them over. That now has happened several times, which raises some suspicion. Another big difference is the quantity of these documents. We're talking about hundreds, thousands of potential documents under the Trump possession. We're talking about a small handful so far, probably fewer than a dozen in the situation of Joe Biden. The other big question to answer is going to be intent. Former President Trump says that he declassified these documents and intended to take them with him. Joe Biden says he doesn't even know what's in these documents, and he was surprised to learn that they were in the possession of anyone other than the federal government in the first place.
I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review.
The protocol would be that if there's some kind of allegation or concern about improper handling, the Justice Department would be on the case. In this case, though, the Justice Department is controlled by President Biden, ultimately. Even if he were to say he is not putting any pressure on the Attorney General is a member of his cabinet, was appointed to that position by him, so there's the potential for a conflict of interest. What you heard from Attorney General Garland is that under normal circumstances, he might think this is something that a Justice Department could handle. But these are extraordinary circumstances. The idea that there's already an investigation about the handling of classified documents involving former President Trump, almost by its nature requires that there be a similar process in place to examine whether President Biden and his team did anything improper on their end.
Here's a follow-up on the classified documents found at Mike Pence's Indiana residence. He apparently had some classified documents at his home and has turned them over. How many? The Justice Department says a small number of documents with classified markings. Greg Jacob is the custodian of Pence's White House records, and in a January 22nd letter to the National Archives, he indicated that the FBI had come to Pence's Indiana home on the night of January 19th to retrieve documents that the former vice president had located a few days earlier. The transfer was facilitated by his personal attorney, who has experience in handling classified documents. The DOJ obtained the documents days after Pence notified the National Archives that he had discovered them at his residence. He says he was unaware of the existence of the documents and had enlisted an outside counsel after reports of the discovery of documents at President Joe Biden's personal residence. I don't really see this as a very big problem for Pence. He had the documents, probably not knowingly. He found them and turned them over, as President Biden did. Both of these cases are significantly different than the Trump case, where he was asked for documents back, returned some of them after many months, certified that it had been all of them, it wasn't, they had to be retrieved, and then yet more documents were found. That is very different than finding something that you shouldn't have and immediately turning them over and cooperating the whole time. What the DOJ and the special counsel will be looking into is whether documents were taken knowingly, whether there was any cover-up, etc. Time will tell. Probably will take longer than 2 weeks, though.
This is a really good question because, as I know now at 10:43 p.m.,
Now, let us not conflate the three situations. Trump knowingly and willingly took documents. Trump has actively lied about the parameters regarding the documents that he took. Critical information, it has been speculated, was within the documents that Trump took. With Biden and Pence, no one knew those documents were missing. That is a National Archives issue that needs to be investigated. It needs to be nipped in the bud. Think of it as your medical records go missing because you have to have a surgery, you're in the emergency room, and they're chilling in your doctor's office because a clerk somewhere screwed up. So do not be distracted by a lot of right-wing nuts that are right now going, well, this means Trump is not. They knew that Trump took documents. They had been serving him notice to return them. They served him a search warrant. They acted upon the search warrant. They had no idea when Trump and Pence were notifying them, like, hey, we have these documents. And they're like, hey, I don't think you do. And they're like, yes, we do. We're looking at them. Nuh-uh, everything's been logged in. They were like, nuh-uh, once again, we're looking at them. But since I did bring up Trump, let's segue into some Trump news updates. Because, you know, he's the gift that keeps giving, that we can't seem to return.
Breaking news from Florida, where a federal judge has officially tossed out former President Donald Trump's lawsuit challenging the search of his Mar-a-Lago estate earlier this year.
Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security to help pay for Joe Biden's reckless spending spree, which is more reckless than anybody's ever done or had in the history of our country. Biden has blown out the federal budget, wasted trillions on left-wing lunacy and the ridiculous Green New Deal, which is a tremendous problem and embarrassment to us, and thrown open our treasury and our borders to migrants from all over the world. In fact, migrants that are coming from prisons and migrants that are coming from mental institutions are being dropped into the United States, and we do nothing about it. I had the safest border in the history of our country just 2 years ago, and now we have probably the worst border in the history of the world. I don't think any country has ever had anything like we have right now. Well, we absolutely need to stop Biden's out-of-control spending. The pain should be borne by Washington bureaucrats, not by hardworking American families and American seniors. The seniors are being absolutely destroyed in the last 2 years. Cut the hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars going to corrupt foreign countries. Cut the mass releases of illegal aliens that are depleting our social safety net and destroying our country. Cut the left-wing gender programs from our military. Cut the billions being spent on climate extremism. Cut waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere that we can find it, and there's plenty of it. But do not cut the benefits our seniors worked for and paid for their entire lives. Save Social Security. Don't destroy it. The Democrats are looking to destroy Social Security. We're not going to let them do it. Thank you very much.
On Wednesday, Donald Trump made what I'm sure his lawyers believe to be a shocking admission on Truth Social when he says that he totally did steal classified folders from the White House. But they were empty, he says. But he kept them because, in his own words, they were cool keepsakes. So I'm going to read you what he put on Truth Social, which is basically a confession, and I'll get to why in just a moment. Here's what he said. The fake news media and crooked Democrats, that's been proven, keep saying I had a large number of documents in order to make the Biden classified docs look less significant, When I was in the Oval Office or elsewhere, and papers were distributed to groups of people and me, they would often be in a striped paper folder with classified or confidential or another word on them. When the session was over, they would collect the papers, but not the folders, and I saved hundreds of them. Remember that these were just ordinary, inexpensive folders with various words printed on them, but they were a cool keepsake. Perhaps the Gestapo took some of these empty folders when they raided Mar-a-Lago and counted them as a document, which they are not. It's also possible that the Trump-hating Marxist thugs in charge will plant documents while they're in possession of the material as president, and based on the Presidential Records Act and Sox case, I did nothing wrong. Joe did. Oh boy. All right. A lot to unpack. First and foremost, even if, let's take it at face value first. Let's assume that you are absolutely 100% telling the truth, that you just wanted these things as cool keepsakes. Why would you need hundreds of them? Right? If it's just like a little memento, like a souvenir, you just need like one or maybe two. If they had different words, sure, I got one that says classified, I got one that says confidential, I got one that says top secret, and I have framed them and look at them. How cool is that? That would be a keepsake. It's like when you go to the Statue of Liberty, you don't buy 100 different miniature statues of liberty. You buy one, because you don't need hundreds of the same thing. So right off the bat, it doesn't make any sense for you to keep, in your own words, hundreds of them. Right? So can we all agree on that? And here's the second part, which you already try to undo in the other part of your message here, which is that there were documents in them. So you admitted you took the folders, but we know that the folders contained documents because the documents were found, and now you're trying to write that off as like, oh, well, they planted those there. No, they didn't. No, they 100% did not. So by admitting you're stealing the folders, you're technically also admitting to stealing the documents, which is why I think this has just created a legal nightmare for your lawyers.
Oh my god. He's got checks, but you can't use them as checks. They're called Patriot checks. The official check of the Patriots. For the low, low price of $500, you can buy 50 of them. One check is the low, low price of $70. Make America great, wealthy, and powerful again. What? Make your dreams come true, because this is the only chance to get a hold of the Save America's Patriot checks. Oh, you should not miss the chance to grab this deal. This is the single biggest thing that is holding you back from achieving the ultimate status of Patriot. Achieve unconditional Patriot status? This is a commemorative check and solely only to be used as memorabilia. Unauthorized duplication or publication of any memorabilia on this site is expressly prohibited. You can pay $500 for 50 pieces of paper that you can print out on a printer. Holy fuck.
One thing about Trump, if you let him talk long enough, he's going to tell on himself, and he can't help it. He can't help it. He really thinks that he's getting ahead of stories, and all he's doing is telling on himself. But he's a brilliant businessman, right? He's a grifter. Now, I hate when I do have to agree with him, but he's absolutely right when in regards to Social Security, and I've said this before. The one thing that Trump truly has mastered about politics is he knows the difference between things that are supposed to be perpetual talking points and things that you're actually supposed to act on. Roe v. Wade was one of those things that was supposed to be a perpetual talking point. No more, no less. But everything else, Trump, you mean the economy is in shambles and isn't motivated with your Reagan 2.0 Reaganomics, the whole trickle-down economics, because you put into place that middle class and poor people will be taxed more, and your rich crony friends that you wish you could be like are getting another tax break? Okay. And we know how much Trump loves the uneducated just as himself. Because the only thing they need to do is feel better. than a person in a marginalized community. They know that the systems, the foundation of the United States was built for them to succeed, especially cisgendered, pseudo-Christian, pseudo-straight white men. And when they have not achieved that success, that's why they fight so hard against the concept of white privilege and white fragility, etc. Yes, there were Trump bucks before, and people even tried to cash them in at a bank. And now they have Trump checks. And that was after the NFTs that came and went expeditiously, quicker than Trump air and Trump water and Trump steaks. But there is one Trump, and it's always a woman in the Trump family, whether by birthright or by name, that always seems to be an astute businesswoman, because the history of the Trump organization has started off as Mary Trump and Sons. And, you know, it was the grandmother who had the forethought when the grandfather passed away. Like, hey, instead of us just buying property and maybe not putting a brothel on here, why don't we put up some rental property? And, you know, Trump has no business sense and tanked it. But remember his first wife, Ivana, who passed away? Y'all know she had a will, right? Like I said, the business acumen doesn't seem to run on the male side of the Trump family.
Oh, you petty bitch. Oh, I knew I liked you. She left nothing. She didn't give him nothing. She gave 1.1 million to her dog. Trump didn't get anything. Oh, I love this for him.
You know what? She dug up the pettiness of Leona Helmsworth and said, let me up the ante. Chef's kiss. And yes, Leona was a bitch. I am not equating their personalities or their business practices to one another. I'm talking about the fact that they stuck it to people after their death by leaving their precious pooches millionaires. Gotta love it. Now, from one crazy sycophant to the next, we're going to jump into Ron DeSantis. But before that, you know, we got to get into the ad. I'll see you in 2 and 2. You know how we do.
The year is 1947.
You don't deserve reparations for slavery because you never suffered slavery.
Of points. One, you should be in favor of reparations, and I'll tell you why. But first, I totally understand why you're not in favor of reparations. You're a poor white man who has failed to achieve any meaningful financial success despite living in a country that was quite literally built for you. So of course you don't believe in white privilege because you've failed to capitalize on yours. But there's this great quote, rising tides lift all boats. So if you stand side by side and help the descendants of slaves receive reparations, they will stand by you in your fight for pay equity, unionization, and political representation. And you should want black people on your side because they have more social and cultural capital than any other marginalized group in this country, than any other group, period. In addition to all of that, there's already a precedent for reparations in this country. The former owners of slaves received reparations from the government for their lost property. So when you say don't deserve, it just leads me to believe that you don't know your history.
I could go on an hours-long diatribe regarding the rights and the forward motion that Black people have brought to just the United States. But I will say this. I've said it before, and let me remind you of this again. Black culture is not exclusionary. It is always inclusionary, even to our detriment. Even to our detriment. But let's move along to Ron DeSantis, who wants to eliminate the actual telling of our history and how bountiful we've been to this country.
Yes, so not only is Ron DeSantis coming for education on a K-12 level, he is also now targeting public state universities. He recently asked them to detail their diversity spending. And these 12 universities here in Florida were among the universities that he asked. He asked to see all the programs related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and critical race theory at these schools. And he also wanted to know if these programs are being funded with state money and how much. And let me tell you right now, at a lot of these schools, less than 1% of the state funding they receive is being put into these programs. And due to this inquiry, colleges and professors have been canceling courses just to be safe. At UCF alone, over 20 sociology courses had to be canceled. One school in particular that he has seriously targeted is a school with a relatively small population called New College. And when you go to New College's website and you see how they describe themselves as valuing equity and actively working toward eliminating outcome disparities for underrepresented and underdeserved groups, it's no surprise as to why he would target this school. It's also important to note that relative to its very small population, there are a decent amount of trans students that attend New College due to their dedication to diversity and inclusion. And now, mind you, DeSantis, on that survey he sent out about diversity, he also asked universities about whether or not they were providing gender-affirming care and supporting their trans students. And it doesn't end there. In his targeted attack on New College, DeSantis appointed 6 new members to their board of trustees, one being Christopher F. Rufo, a right-wing anti-civil rights advocate. But wait, y'all, please get into this. In his mission statement for how he wants to transform the New College of Florida, Rufo stated as one of his bullet points that he wants to abolish diversity, equity, and inclusion and replace it with equality, merit, and color blindness. Like, what? At this point, what DeSantis is doing in Florida is straight up fascism. There are no two ways about it. And what's so scary is that other states are going to see what he's doing and they're going to try to adopt it. Not only that, he is trying to take this ideology and this rhetoric to the White House in 2024, and he has people supporting him. Absolutely not. Make sure y'all like, share, follow, and comment how you feel, and stay vigilant.
This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them when you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory?
Okay, really, Ron? Okay, where to begin, dear? James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, Little Richard, Lorraine Hansberry, Alvin Ailey, Audre Lorde, Barbara Jordan, Marsha P. Johnson, Ernestine Eckstein, Ron Odom, Phil Wilson, Lori Lightfoot, Willie Ninja, Stormé DeLavery, Andrea Jenkins, and Miss Mayor Griffin Gracie. And that's just to name some of the figures who cross over between African American and queer history. And you would know that, Ron, if you'd ever taken a decent history class, or maybe, I don't know, African American studies. So maybe instead of telling Black folk how to teach our history and how to learn it, maybe you should go back to school, because it sounds like you need a little education. Oh, and also, keep Dr. King's name out of your mouth. Thank you.
So the world is laughing at Ron DeSantis for making these comments. And I don't think they should be laughing, because I don't think he said them accidentally. At one point in my life, I got a pre-law degree, albeit from an average D1 school. But I know that it's chocked full of history classes and political science classes. What do you think this man studied at Yale? He studied history, you guessed it. And he spent the last 6 years basically apprenticing a man named Donald Trump. And one thing he's learned from Donald Trump is that there are certain lies that appeal to the voter base that he is interested in. Donald Trump stumbled onto these accidentally. This man is intentional with his words. So I'm no fan of Ron DeSantis, but I was raised around right-wing, far right-wing conservatives. And there's 3 things that's happening in that statement he makes about the Revolutionary War and slavery. 1, he's using the word revolution. And there's a whole segment of conservatives who respond to the word revolution with, yeah, 1776! Number 2, there is actually an entire segment of far right-wing conservatives who don't know the difference between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, which allows Ron DeSantis to zip in there and take advantage of their ignorance, and he gets to get them fired up about revolution. Number 3, a whole swath of conservatives believe Christians. It was Christians that stopped slavery. The dude even brings up abolitionists in those talking points. John Brown, the abolitionist, was a radical leftist who sought to dismantle institutions of the conservative government through violence to help the little guy, not the corporation, not the wealthy elite. Now, most conservatives are unaware of who John Brown is or what an abolitionist really is, but he was not a right-wing conservative Christian. But a lot of conservative Christians believe that Christians in 1776 hated slavery and they wanted a Christian nation, and it was the liberals that brought in slavery. And when the mainstream media laughs at this guy for that statement, oh, he's so dumb, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think he knows what he's doing. We laughed at Trump too. Now we're laughing at DeSantis. It didn't help us with Trump. I don't think it's going to help us now. That's just my opinion.
Now, if you followed me for a while on the main page for this podcast, you know that I said that Ron DeSantis is far more dangerous and far more tyrannical than Trump, because, as I stated previously, Trump knows the difference between what should stay a talking point and what shouldn't. It seems to be the only political acumen that he has. Ron DeSantis acts on it. Ron DeSantis comes from an immigrant background. Ron DeSantis understands full well what he's doing, and that really makes him dangerous. I'm not saying he's exactly like Hitler, but let's not forget, Hitler went against his own reflection to proclaim what the Aryan race was, what the superior race was. And he convinced people, even though he did not fit the criteria, he should lead the superior pure blood race. Did you hear what I said? And see, far too many people, specifically conservative national Christians, when they hear revolution, they automatically think patriotism, and patriotism to them is giving your life or taking a life. It's also individualism. As long as this works for me, I don't care if it works for thee. This is why it's hard and damn near impossible to get them out of the mindset of racism. Because even if and when they don't see themselves as racist, they individualize themselves from their friends and family. So they'll sit in a room and listen and watch the racism. They'll willingly vote for and benefit from the racism. But they've individualized themselves so much, and because they're willing to have this second civil war, coupled with the revisionist history, the South will rise again. The South has never risen. It burnt itself to the ground. And to this day, it's still trying to recover and recoup to get back to its glory days. That's why Ron DeSantis is claiming that intersectionality and the abolition of the school to prison pipeline is political instead of nuanced history. Because if you convince people that human rights is political, they don't have to look at anybody but themselves as human. Now, the last time we all gathered together, we discussed the funeral campaign rally that was supposed to be Diamond and Silk's homegoing. You know what? There's just more. Just take a look.
You're trying to say what I'm saying is not true? Well, here comes the receipts.
President Trump, I just want to say thank you so much for believing in Diamond and Silk. He treated us just like Laura. He treated us just like the other children. Eric, Don Jr., Tiffany. He treated us just like when we came around, when Diamond and Silk came around, it was like we was part of the family.
You know, the world has lost one of its brightest stars, real star, but I see that we have another star who is equal to, but she stepped up and she is different. I'm serious. I thought I knew them both. I didn't. I knew Diamond, but I didn't know Silk at all. I just learned about Silk. You have open borders where millions and millions of people are being let into our country and taking so much away from our country. It's so hard to fix that, you know.
Boom.
I mean, she got that right. He did treat him like family. Well, at least her. He treated her like Tiffany. But let's keep going.
This video is being made for educational purposes. Having said that, recently I made a video about the unfortunate passing of Lynette Hardaway, who was one half of Diamond and Silk, which was a duo of black women that for some reason love Trump. Reportedly, Lynette Hardaway passed away after contracting the hoax that is COVID-19. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that that is beyond ironic. Now, recently there was a service for Lynette Hardaway, and a bunch of people were there, including Silk and Trump and a bunch of other people that think just like them, and Silk is claiming that Lynette Hardaway died due to the COVID vaccine, which is very interesting because all they have ever done is preach anti-vax rhetoric. Exhibit A, B, C, D. So even if that were true, Silk, are you trying to tell me that y'all got the COVID vaccine even though you are anti-vax? Not to make a mountain out of a tiny mountain, but that sounds kind of sus. Now, this tweet came across my timeline with a video of Pastor Mark Burns giving an opening prayer, and y'all gotta hear this. Let's just say, this is one of the strangest services I've ever seen in my life.
Of the Lord Jesus Christ. And even now, she's looking down, and I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, Diamond is talking to Jesus, and she is saying, Jesus, please make sure that Donald J. Trump is the next president of the United States of America. Somebody better give you something.
He looks just as confused as me. Even he was looking around like, y'all are cheering for this? Believe it or not, everybody, it actually gets worse because Trump went up to speak and he... Just listen to this.
That, things, we can fix inflation. We can fix so much of what's been damaged over the last 2 years. We had it going so well, but we can fix these things. But, millions of people, I think 15 million people, they say 3, maybe 4. I know, no, I think they have no idea how many people. And they allowed their prisons to be emptied out into the United States of America. They allowed their mental institutions to be emptied out into the United States of America. And common sense would tell you that if you had common sense, you wouldn't be doing that. Mike would know that, but you wouldn't be doing this. Millions and millions of people are coming, and no country would be able to withstand this. No country, whether you're rich or poor. And we're not really rich. We owe, as of this morning, $31 trillion. So I don't know, you call it rich, I guess. I don't know. Maybe not. We spend a lot of money on other countries, and many of those countries hate us, so we give them money. So common sense would tell you all of these things. Inflation was caused by energy. They stopped the energy, and all of a sudden your gasoline went from $1.87 a gallon to $5, $6, $7. In California, $8 a gallon. And when your baker makes his cakes, and when your hospitals create heat, and all of the different things you need this for, everything goes up, and it's runaway. It's far greater than people thought.
I thought this was supposed to be about Lynette Hardaway. What even is he talking about? Inflation and prisons and mental institutions, gas prices. What does any of that have to do with Lynette Hardaway? These people can't even get services right. I swear to God, if anybody at my future service talks about anything that has nothing to do with me, I am coming back from the dead and I am going to eat them. Like, this is my time. Do not talk about gas prices and inflation. You better talk about me and how damn handsome I am. They also played a video of Diamond, like, cussing out Biden, so... This wasn't your average funeral, know what I mean? In all seriousness, I don't think it's funny what happened to Lynette Hardaway. I think it's extremely sad that there are people out there who have denied COVID and said the vaccines are dangerous and then contracted COVID and have lost their life to it. I think that's incredibly sad. The fact that there are people out there who would rather listen to Joe Rogan than doctors and inject themselves with ivermectin is concerning, and quite frankly, it just makes me think our education system has failed. A lot of people out there, a lot of people are way too easily brainwashed. Places like Fox News need to be shut down, and in the end, it is just sad to me.
Does this surprise anybody? Trump turns up at a memorial service for vlogger Diamond, and then he turned it into a campaign speech. And Silk, who is Diamond's partner, basically built up Trump, saying that he treated them just like family. And then Trump got up and basically said, I don't even know who she is. Trump got up and talked about the border, among other grievances. This just proves there's no low to where he'll go, using a memorial service to get attention. Boom.
Jim Crow Joe Biden ain't called me yet. He ain't gonna call me. It was President Donald J. Trump that picked up the phone and called me. You all, I just want you all to know about this one.
Okay, why would Joe Biden call you? I highly doubt that Trump called you because he did not even know who you were. You picked up the phone and called. And more than likely, the only reason you got him there is because you all had tickets for your sister's funeral. So outside of you, what other family members were there? Because there were a lot of sycophants that were taking pictures next to the Trump and Diamond memorabilia that was outside leading up into the sanctuary. And then you played a video of your sister cussing out the current POTUS in the sanctuary of a church. Y'all love God so much that y'all continuously do not study his words, do not follow his tenets, and disrespect his houses of worship. You had the conservative equivalent of a GoFundMe to raise funds to preserve her memory, but what are you preserving? Was that to cover the cost to get Trump to be there? Because at this point, I believe you and your sister's net worth is far greater than his. We saw the tax returns because you and your sister are millionaires. But once again, Silky Press. Why would the current president call you? During Joe Biden in office, I'd lost some family members. Did I expect a call from the president? No. They didn't die in service of the country. They didn't die in a mass shooting or anything. You all are infamous for being walking stereotypical minstrel shows. But I guess. Oh, and darlings. I do not know what's going on with Greek restaurants within the United States. But my good Greek restaurant owners, you might want to tighten it up regarding, as my daddy would say, keeping your head on the swivel and who you allow to patronize, like take up reservations and things. And when you start to notice people are getting creepy, maybe ban them from the premises. Because let's dig into this very eerie update regarding the Idaho murder suspect. And if you're new here, no, I will not say their names. I don't say the names of murderers.
Very early on in the process, we start reaching out.
Details coming out tonight about alleged reports surrounding the Idaho murder suspect. Early this week, People magazine reported that Kohberger ate at a restaurant where two of the victims worked as waitresses. News Nation spoke with Steve Helling, a senior crime writer for People, yesterday. This is what he had to say.
Whether or not his paths crossed with the girls there and whether or not that's where it started, that's something that the cops would know for sure. But we know for sure that he ate there at least twice.
But now the Mad Greek restaurant is rejecting reports that alleged killer Bryan Kohberger dined there shortly before the murders. In a Facebook post, the restaurant saying, quote, "This will be my only response to the story from People. It is not true. Now, this comes as new documents released this week show a laundry list of items seized from Kohberger's home. This includes a red-stained pillow, mattress covers, along with nitrile gloves and receipts. The release of that information came after the judge in the case expanded a gag order on who can and cannot speak to the media, and it now includes the victims' families and their attorneys. So we want to bring in Tracy Walder here, former CIA officer and FBI special agent. Tracy, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Natasha. Good to see you.
Good to see you. What was your reaction after hearing the Mad Greek restaurant is rejecting the notion that Kohberger dined there?
You know, part of me thought, okay, well, this is just false reporting then on behalf of People magazine. But then I realized that there is a gag order in place. And, you know, if information did get out, there could be legal consequences for that. And also it can affect the ultimate prosecution of Bryan Kohberger. And so part of me wonders if the owner is trying to sort of walk that back a little bit. So that's really where my thoughts were.
Interesting. And we've also heard in reports that the alleged killer attempted to message one of the victims on social media. What are your thoughts on this?
So interestingly, I don't make a tremendous amount out of it. You know, I get messages to my social media that I don't necessarily know that I have because, you know, if you go into Instagram, you actually have to physically look at those message requests. And so whichever victim that he did message, it could be two reasons. It could be one, they really wanted nothing to do with him, or the second reason could be they had really no idea that he had sent them a message request. But what it does point to is the fact that Kohberger did, in a way, sort of have that tertiary contact with one of the victims and perhaps made more out of that contact than perhaps they did.
At this point, do you think that he specifically targeted one or more of the victims?
You know, I always, you know, hate to hypothesize. I personally do think that he targeted one of the victims. I've kind of maintained that from the beginning. And my biggest reason, and I think Mr. Gonsalves said this, was that he didn't have to go upstairs. That's really my biggest sort of indicator as to why I do think that he targeted one of the victims. That's incredibly risky to do. And it really accelerated his chances of ultimately being caught.
Now, if it is found that he was DMing or trying to message these victims, can the prosecution use any of this against Kohberger going forward?
Yes, I would imagine so, because what it does is it really kind of points to his premeditation. So if you look at sort of that laundry list of things that was found in his apartment, things like receipts, which I know not a lot has been made out of those, but those all point to things like premeditation. If he went and purchased things beforehand, that shows that he really was planning this. And it's the same thing with those direct message requests. Was he targeting someone? Was he planning this? All of those things, in my opinion, point to the premeditation of this crime.
And what are your thoughts regarding the items removed from Kohberger's home in that newly released search warrant?
Yeah, so the reality is it was obviously such a gruesome crime scene and such a bloody crime scene that he had to have taken something with him. I don't care if he wore, you know, the full painter suit into that. And what I saw that was the most interesting to me were actually some of the hairs that were recovered, and then the kind of swatches of pillowcases that were also recovered. And so I'm wondering if from those things they're going to be able to actually place the forensic evidence of the victims into his apartment. So that was one of the bigger takeaways for me from that.
And one last question for you, Tracy. The gag order is extensive from this judge. We now know that more than 20 news organizations, including the Associated Press, are forming a coalition. They're asking the judge to narrow this order. Why have such an extensive gag order? Is this the right thing for the judge to do?
You know, this is unusual. Obviously, to your point, it is incredibly extensive and it's incredibly broad. And I really haven't seen media reaction like this before. I do think that it is very large reaching. I think one of the things that the judge is trying to do is there's a lot of online discussion and a lot of online chatter about this case. And he doesn't want anything sort of tainting that pool of the prosecution of the case. And I understand it from that perspective. However, I do think that this is a bit of an overreach, and especially how it affects the victims and the victims' families and their ability to talk about this case.
All right, Tracy Walder, as always, appreciate your insight and time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
very early on in the process. We start reaching out when something bad happens. And so, a lot of us had sources, including myself, and we ran a lot of stuff that maybe the judge doesn't want to be out there. It kind of shows us that we are headed down the right track, because suddenly we have a much more strict gag order. I don't expect there to be any more leaks after this, because it's pretty clear that nobody's allowed to talk.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case. So is there anything that could indicate Kohberger visited this restaurant with the intention of stalking or hurting Xana or Madison? Or do you think this is really about his strict dietary restrictions?
Well, that in that area, there's very few restaurants that serve exclusive or that serve vegan food, that they use, separate ingredients. They use separate part of the kitchen. And the Mad Greek just happened to be one of those places. I don't get the feeling, and I don't believe that the cops get the feeling, that the first times he went there for any other reason but to get a vegan pizza. Whether or not his paths crossed with the girls there, and whether or not that's where it started, that's something that the cops would know for sure. But we know for sure that he ate there at least twice, probably more. And, that was a place that was familiar to him.
Interesting. So what other big questions do you still have about the case? What more do you think we'll be learning between now and the next hearing in June?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have, almost 5 months now. And during these next 5 months, I'd like to know, what, other than the cell phone pinging and the DNA, what else did they have that led them to Bryan Kohberger? And more than that, what's the motive? I think that's what everybody wants to know. Who was the intended victim and what was the motive? And both of those things are information that the police have been keeping close to the chest for right now.
Yeah. Certainly will be interesting. Well, Steve Helling, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Breaking news, Bryan Kohberger visited the restaurant where Xana and Maddie worked prior to the crimes. According to the former employee, Kohberger came in twice and ordered vegan pizza. The former employee said that Kohberger's visits were not suspicious. However, he stood out because he would make them check to see if his food had come in contact with any animal products. Furthermore, the investigator familiar with the case says that law enforcement is familiar with the visits and that they have interviewed the owners and employees of the restaurant. They have also collected surveillance from the restaurant along with surrounding businesses. They said it is unclear whether either victim waited on him or interacted with him. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
I think the one aspect that nobody's bringing up as to why the owner would say, no, he wasn't here right before the murders. These murders rocked this town and that college, and actually rocked the country for quite a while. Outside of the true crime sycophants, who would really want to go there? And do you really want your establishment known for that? Now, I will see you all tomorrow right here for Freeform Fridays, because like I said, the main is going to be banned till at least Tuesday. We'll see if I continue to get mass reported. I will complete getting this page together tomorrow. I have been under the weather, so I'll make sure I get the link tree and everything up in here. But until tomorrow, as always, each one teach one, each one reach one, and let this stick with you. There's a little women's empowerment.
Welcome to the new era of the global women's empowerment platform. Welcome to the Miss Universe organization. From now on, it's going to be ran by women, owned by trans women, for all women. For all women really around the world to celebrate the power of feminism, diverse cultures, social inclusion, gender equality, creativity, the force for good, and of course, the beauty of humanity.